If you look around yourself and around society today, you see there's so many people that are just running around screaming that they're a victim. This perceived virtues of a victim, what are they? And why do victims just not get any type of respect? We're going to be talking about that this week on Relaxed Male. Hello and welcome to Relaxed Male, a podcast that helps men change their relationship with themselves. I am your host, Brian, and I am a men's life and mindset coach who is here to help you understand that you don't have to suffer at your own expense. You can live your dream, and I encourage you to set, then pursue your goals. So join me as I change the mindset and attitudes of men so that they can be the leaders of their families and their destinies. Hey man, hello and welcome to Relaxed Male. All right, so this week we're going to be talking about perceived virtues of victims and why are they perceived this way and what's wrong with these different perceptions. But before we actually start into that, if you are new to the show, man, I want to thank you so much for actually taking the time to listen. It does me good to think that there are people who are gaining some type of value from these podcasts. I try to put one out every week, and so far been doing good. We're a little stagnant in the growth area, but if you end up liking the show, it would do me great, do all of us great if you were to actually just take the time to share this podcast out with your friends, family, and on your socials, all that. It would just that way let people know that, hey, there's this podcast out here called The Relaxed Male, and it helps guys to become the men that they want, they know's hiding out inside of them, and to live a life in a confident fashion and to live life on their terms. So this week, I want to talk about victims. All right. If you know anything about me, if you've listened to any of my other podcasts about victims, if you've read any of my blog posts about victims, you know, I don't give victims much slack, because victims, honestly, as a base, they don't get any respect. They don't earn any respect. They are users. And these are the people who are just, you know, they want everybody to feel sorry for them and to give them things. And that's just not beneficial. I did a podcast a while back called, Are You a Consumer or a Producer? Victims fall into the consumer category. They are always having something. There's someone they are attracted to the rush of, oh my gosh, I'm in danger. I need help, or something to that effect. They're always running in a reactive state, and that doesn't work out because you've got that friend who comes and rescues them each and every time. But eventually that friend gets really tired of rescuing them for all their many different reasons, whether it's they've got they're perceiving that they have lost all their money and that they are not going to be, they're fixing to get kicked out of their apartment. But, you know, if you really sat back and looked at them, you know, you go, but wait a minute, you were just at the casino 4 days ago, and what money did you use at the casino? You start looking, and their stories as to why their life is in the state of chaos that it's in starts to fall apart, and you start to really start seeing who and why the victim's friends status always fades out, and people come in and then they're there for a little while and then they leave. Now, in today's society, sadly, victims are being lauded. They are being held up to the light, saying that they are being heroes for being a mooch on society is a way to look at it. Now, I know some people are probably going to think that was really harsh and mean, and okay, you can think that all you want. To me, that's what they are. They are not doing anything productive. They are trying to come up with as many different forms of panic that they can to get people, to manipulate people into feeling sorry for themselves. That's not a recipe for respect. That is not a recipe for being able to get yourself out of whatever the hole is. Most victims are swamped with a scarcity mindset, a fixed mindset, and they don't ever grow mentally or emotionally.
So you look at today's, I mean, they've got people running around, they're claiming they're victims of hate. They're victims of oppression, victims of capitalism. And, you look at it and they're wearing Nike tennis shoes, carrying around an Apple iPhone, driving around in an Escalade, but yet they are the victims of capitalism. They're the victims of those capitalistic corporations. They're victims of slavery. We haven't had slavery in, damn near 200 years, but yet somehow they're still a victim of slavery. We've even had people who claim that they're victims of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches of all things. And yes, there is an actual link to that story, in the show notes. If you actually want to read about how a Portland school was actually, trying to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches a racist thing. So yeah, these days, anything can be used as a weapon to go, oh my gosh, I am so victimized. Look at the woke culture. I mean, they pride themselves on being victims of whatever it is. You didn't look at me. You didn't say hi. Feminism and is a mode of victimization. They're trying to say, like women don't make as much money as what men do. But when you actually look at the true numbers, they actually make a little bit more. We need to have more women in schools. Well, there are more girls in schools now than there are guys. There's a lot of where the absurdity of all these people celebrating being victimized. They say something and then they have somebody disagree with them. No, they're people of hate. And, and they, and all their little woke buddies come running around and start hugging on them, going, it's okay. And patting them on the back and the shoulder saying, you're a good person. Yes, you are. And you're talking to just a bad man. And it's all this absurdity just is off the charts. And it can be honestly, and it's horrifying if you actually look at it just for the sole fact that they're picking this up from our schools. Now, I am not a fan of the government schools, though I know teachers, and most teachers are not like what the government schools want to teach. The schools these days want to teach victimhood. They want to teach things like, critical race theory and things like that. And it's just, they're building more victims, to look to whatever reason. Honestly, I don't know why people think that victims are such a great and wonderful thing, because they're not. They are the quintessential kind of losers of society. Now, when I say a victim, you can actually look at two different things. You've got the real victim. All right. These are the people who just got a bad luck of the draw. They came down with some type of inoperable brain cancer or bone cancer. That the baby who was born into an abusive family. There are true victims out there, and those people we should definitely be out, definitely helping, definitely making sure we help them in any way, form, shape, form, or fashion or another. Others are what I call perceived victims. These are the victims of their own design. They made themselves a victim. You've had those people who are just, no matter what happens, there's always some type of crisis. They've got there's some type of fire that needs to be put out. And they're always coming to you, dude, I'm $5 short on this. And it's like, well, I gave you some money last week. Yeah, well, I had to use it for gas. It's like, it wasn't for gas. It was for those, for your electricity, man. Or I don't have enough money for diapers. It's like, well, again, what'd you do with it? A lot of times people will set themselves up for those different failures. And then when when that failure happens, it's somebody else's fault. You've known somebody at work who never takes responsibility for whatever is going on. Maybe they sat there and bossed a whole bunch of people around, and those people got fed up and they left. And all of a sudden it's everybody else's fault that they got up and left. And it was unprofessional that they did that, and they should have never. We get that. And you hear this all the time in politics where people are pointing fingers at somebody else saying it's their fault and their fault and their fault and their fault. And yeah, I know I just got finished pointing my fingers at some really dumb people. But again, I realize what I'm doing. I realize what it is I'm saying. And it's really sad to see how many people are actually falling into the trap of a perceived victim. Now, a victim is a person who voluntarily gives up their personal power or to another person or a thing. All right. How many times have you gotten really pissed off at, say, your car because you were needing to get to work on time and the battery is dead? Well, whose fault is that actually? Is it the fact that the battery, you left the headlights on? Or maybe even it's a bad cell and you knew it was kind of starting to act a little like really didn't want to start. And when the temperature's kind of cooled off, you go to start it and it would just kind of, and it would take off. You know, oh, okay. Yeah, I got a few more cranks out of it. Until one day you go, you know the lights are off. You know everything was turned off, but yet the battery is dead. Whose fault is that? Is that the battery's? Or is it actually yours because you didn't actually get the car battery swapped out when you were able to? Before you had this need to get to work on time. How many times have you tried going to, needed to go someplace and you left, you looked at the map, you pulled up Google Maps and it said, hey, you need to leave and, leave at this amount of time. And you look at that and all right, well, I can leave then. It's only 25 minutes to work. So you hop in the car and you get into a traffic jam. Or maybe you need to be somewhere and you end up being late because you got wrong directions, bad directions. Whose fault is that? The person who gave you the directions or the fact that you left too late to actually correct yourself for the directions? You see, everybody plays a part. Even if you're going through a divorce and you're going, I didn't do anything, man. I don't know. My wife has just always been complaining and no matter what I do, I do the dishes. I do the clothes. I clean the bathroom. I do all this stuff for her and she just gets mad and leaves. Well, okay. That may sound like, you're an innocent victim, but in all reality, you may not be as much of a victim as you want to think you are. You could actually be the fact that you were doing everything and babying her and being a caretaker and being what's called a nice guy. I've talked about nice guys in the past. Nice guys actually will sabotage that relationship. A lot of times, if you were to, you're not giving your wife the chance to be able to live her life and to be able to make the decisions. You're busy controlling everything. So that could be just the fact of what it was. If you're going in and you're helping her with the dishes, that's one thing. But if you're going through and you're putting a whole bunch of extra pressure on her because you have a covert contract that if you do all this stuff, she's going to give you a handy later on, or she's going to do some other type of sexual act for you. No, that type of pressure, she's going to smell that covert contract. She may not be able to recognize exactly what it is, but she's going to know that dude's up for something. He's fixing to do something and it's, and no, I'm not going to do it. And so women will get tired of those covert contracts and eventually leave. So whose fault is it? Is the fact that the wife got fed up with the relationship and the closed off emotions? Or was it because you were being a controlling nice guy and you wouldn't allow her to experience life on her own terms? This is a big thing. This is a big problem that happens a lot of times. Now, victimhood, we all face victimhood. All right. We all gain a victim mindset from time to time. It is such an easy, comfortable bed to lay in. You can easily just go, I couldn't help it. I couldn't find my keys. Well, whose fault was it you couldn't find the keys? Well, could have been yours, could have been the kids run off with it. But again, if the kids ran off with it, whose fault is it? It bends back to you. You can look at it and see, yeah, well, I left them sitting down on the coffee table and my 3-year-old must have flushed them down the toilet. There's things out there. You know what you need to do and how to prevent stuff from happening, but yet we don't. And when something unexpected happens, we want to fall onto that victim mindset. I've done that many times. I did some major damage to the underside of a truck once because I was backing into a place and I'd seen a bunch of other tracks on the grass and thought, okay, well, this is good. I can back across this. Well, no. First off, we had just got a whole crap ton of snow, so the ground was sodden and it was not packed down completely. So I went off and I dropped a wheel into a bunch of really soft dirt, sunk up to my axle, the edge of the curb, shattered the oil pan, made a big old monstrous mess. And come to find out, it's about $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $12,000 of repair later. The truck was back together, and the landscaping that I tore up has been repaired. There's whose fault was it? Well, it's mine. I'm the dummy who went off. I was in control of the steering wheel. It's my fault. I made a bad judgment. That was my doings. It's not the previous trucks that backed across there and was able to do it just fine. It's mine. Because at that very moment, if I'd have stepped on the grass, I probably would have noticed that it was really, really squishy. So we all fall into these victims' mindsets, whether it is for something very easy to fall back on, or if it's something, it's like no one would notice. I could always blame it on Russell. He's always screwing shit up, and we can do that type of stuff. But again, is that something to fall back on? That victim mindset makes you to become a very unlikable person. With that comfort and being a victim can be very comfortable. You look at anybody there's a good example of it. People throw a fit about, nowadays, they throw a fit about something called gentrification. What gentrification is when you have a bunch of white people move into a black neighborhood and all of a sudden the property rates rise. Well, they want to try to blame the white people for the fact that they made the neighborhood nicer. And it's not that black people can't have nice neighborhoods. There's a lot of them that really do. But when you go into a very poor, rundown neighborhood, and there's been talks of this happening before, where you have people, not just people of color, but you take anybody who is of poverty level, and you move them into a house that is in an upper middle class neighborhood. Say there's some type of special Section 8 housing comes up and is available in this upper middle class neighborhood. Well, at first they show up, they're really impressed. They kind of are in awe of the whole. Oh my gosh, this is such a nice area. This is a beautiful neighborhood, great schools and all this. Well, what normally happens is they bring the ghetto area, the poor side of town over with them. They don't leave that behind because they still have a mindset of being broke, that it's not their fault that they don't have any money. They don't have the thoughts of how to address higher levels of money. And because of that fact, a lot of times they realize, this is really nice. I've got more bedrooms than what we're used to having. Now each kid has a room. So actually I could move all the kids into one room, and let's move our cousin. He lived next door to us, him and his 4 kids, and we'll move them all into one room and put my cousin in another room. And all of a sudden the house, the value of that house starts to go down because they start doing things that cause the property value to drop because people aren't used to being that level. This is called an upper limit. Gay Hendricks from The Big Leap actually talks about how people will find themselves in this upper limit. And a lot of times people will play the victim so that they can get themselves back under that under their internal comfort meter. So all of a sudden you bring people in to an upper middle class neighborhood. That middle class neighborhood's value starts to go down to where it's just middle class, and then it's lower middle class, and then it's just at the same level as the other side. All of a sudden, the poor side of town has moved over onto the nice side of town. And so what happens is the nice side of town people move over and they start flipping the houses. And those houses that were over in the bad part of town, suddenly their values start to go up and they become the upper middle class area. Why? Well, because people took care. They have a different mindset and they will carry that mindset with them. So when you can take a poor person out of a poor side of the neighborhood, but if they are too comfortable being poor, they will stay in that poor area. And yes, poor people stay poor because they're comfortable. I know there's going to be people who complain about that and say that I'm being horribly judgmental on that. And no, it's not being judgmental. It's being truthful. You bring a person, anybody who suddenly gets inundated with a lot of money, takes them no time at all to blow that money so they can get back down into the area where they're comfortable. Because all of a sudden, if you have more money than what you're used to, you become very uncomfortable with that because all your friends and family are coming over and they're begging, asking for money. They've got this they got this great job, business idea, and all they need is just a couple $100,000 to really get it up and going. And before they know it, that money's gone, their friends are gone, their family's spread out, and they have more debt than what they started out with. And that is because of that upper limit challenge. Now, one of the great things, at least in a victim's mind, that they're able to use the victim mindset for is the fact that they're able to drown out any type of worries. Yeah, they still are worried. They still have that sensation of worry. They still have the suffering that comes along with worrying about stuff. What's going to happen next month? All that. But for the time being, their worry is slightly sedated when they're able to find someone who can help them with whatever the problem is. Now, I'm one who likes to help. Whenever I'm going into Oklahoma City on the end of the week, whenever I pull in, if I see someone on like a street corner or something that's got the sign up says anything will help, well, then okay, I'll help them out. I'll reach back in my refrigerator in the truck and I'll actually grab maybe some sausages that I may have had or a meal that I never got around to actually eating, and I'll go ahead and I'll give it to them, and that's how I'll help them out. Now, so I alleviate their worry some on the food. And on all reality, I think they probably receive enough money and other food that they probably take that and they're able to share it out. That is to a point that is, I'm perpetuating, I'm taking that guy's worry away for a little bit. If he wasn't getting anything to, anybody to bite while he was sitting there for the hour or 15, 20 minutes or however long it is that he's standing on that street corner, I've at least relieved his worry of food for a little while, but he's still going to have that worry. The following day, he's going to need to eat again. So he's going to have that perpetual worry. Well, if I was able to actually really help him, it would be to get him out of the mindset of being the victim, of being able to take care of himself and to stand on his own 2 feet, because right now he's depending upon other people. That type of victimhood, that type of the poor, again, being an example of they're not willing to get out of that comfort zone, out of their comfort zone and get into the uncomfortable area of growth because they are not willing to get out of that comfort zone. They're not willing to even do what another issue with victims being that they don't have to worry about responsibility. So yeah, they didn't have to take up the responsibility of trying to find the food themselves. They had people who came by like me and hand them food, but they're not having to take the responsibility of going out and working and making an effort to actually earn the money needed to be able to buy food, to earn the money needed to rent a house or an apartment or something like that. There's a lot of responsibility that a victim honestly can give up. They don't have to sweat it anymore. They don't have to worry about anything anymore because somebody else is taking care of the problem. Oh, the government's taking care of it. Oh, the state's taking care of it. Oh, these nice people who drive past me on a corner, they're taking care of it. I'm making, say $13 an hour and I've got 4 kids. Okay. Government again is taking care of it. Having 4 kids is not a man or woman thing. It's, either one, even poor, even a married couple who only one's working, the other one's staying home trying to take care of the kids, okay, the guy may need to find some way of being able to up his income, doing something that he's not really going to be comfortable in doing. But again, a lot of times people who are playing the victim they don't take responsibility for any of their actions, anything that they're needing, anything that actually is their cause. They're not going to take that responsibility. They deflect. They've almost got this responsibility deflector shield up, and so any type of problem that comes their way, they would deflect the responsibility out to other people. So, and responsibility requires you to get a little bit uncomfortable. Sorry, but you do. Even if you are a new parent, you're going to all of a sudden you've got the responsibility of this brand new baby. That is a lot of discomfort, especially that first 6 months until kiddo figures out, hey, I can sleep all night and be up all day and harass mom that way. There are a lot of responsibilities that are needed, but those responsibilities allow you to gain so much self-worth that when you deflect that responsibility, your sense of worth drops tremendously. So if you want to be able to feel like you're worth making $100,000 a year, your responsibility is going to go up to that level of what you perceive $100,000 a year type of person is going to be. And some people really start to struggle and strain under that type of responsibility. All of a sudden they're like going, oh, I've got to give up all my friends and family and things I want to do and my freedom because I have all this responsibility. And in all reality, no, that's not fully the case. So when it comes to victims, that all sounds really nice and grand and stuff, except for the fact that they don't have any, you get to ditch responsibility. You don't have as much worry. You're comfortable in your situation and, you get immediate acknowledgement. That's another one because people all of a sudden they're paying attention to you. I just lost my purse. Well, it was sitting right here in the basket and I went down to the end of the aisle to get some stuff and someone stole my purse. Well, okay. Ma'am, I said, why did you leave your purse behind? There's those questions, but even though you're asking them, you're all of a sudden, they've made themselves the center of your world and everybody who's focused in on them, they're all of a sudden the center. So there's immediate acknowledgement. And the fact that just being a victim doesn't take much skill at all. So why is being a victim bad other than for those very reasons that I was stating that were kind of actually can be seen by a victim as good? The biggest one being they don't grow. But also because the victim mindset is such a means of state of panic. Okay. State of panic. Okay. And it burns up a lot of energy and not just for the victim itself, but the people who are having to come to rescue, they're actually burning up more energy because a victim mindset is a form of manipulation. You're trying to get everybody else to do stuff for you so you can stay comfortable, so you don't have to deal with responsibilities. And a lot of this can be seen. And I've tried looking for it and I cannot find it, but I heard somewhere that there is a cycle in charity giving. And it's usually on every so often, I forget exactly how many years this cycle is, but the cycle starts out, and I want to say it was through Tom's Shoes, but again, I don't have that information in front of me. I wasn't able to find it. But there's an instance where when you start giving people charitable gifts, say, like, for example, I can't say the word. For example, they, Tom shoes, when you buy a pair, they give a pair to the poor. Well, what ends up happening is at first, the poor people who receive brand new shoes, they're really grateful. There's a lot of gratitude involved in that. And as they keep each year, they come back and they get a new pair of shoes. They're really grateful for for the first 2-3 years. But then after that, all of a sudden there's a shift in there. And so when you're giving people something free without earning it, eventually it becomes, start to think that it's an entitlement. And all of a sudden, say the 10th year comes along. Maybe that's the cycle number. It might only be 6. I don't know. And like I said, I don't know. But the person eventually starts coming up and will start getting mad if you don't give them the right type of shoes. Well, these shoes always hurt my feet. They start complaining about that gift. And that's because they've lost that sense of gratitude. Being a victim, you have no gratitude. You're not grateful for anything. Yeah, you may be grateful in the instance, but it's a very, very short-lived sense of gratitude that somebody actually swooped in, saved your tail end from your own dumb mistake. And yes, being a victim means you did something stupid and careless, and we all do it. There's nothing wrong with beating yourself up over it, as long as you're not, damning yourself for it. Cause I've done it many times where I went to the store, grabbed $20, stuck it in my pocket, got to the store to go buy something, and the $20 was gone. Wasn't in the car, looked along where I walked past, wasn't there, made it back to the house, scoured all through there. It fell out of the pocket for someplace, somehow, and poof, voila, it's gone. It's never to be seen again. And that might have been my last $20 until next payday. And might have still been, a week and a half away. There was a time where, we would go get everything we needed for the pay period, and we'd have it all used up. And okay, we've still got, a week and a half before we can even look at trying to buy more groceries or something. So this charitable cycle, though it's done out of people's the kindness of people and to help other people, a lot of times that helping a victim causes that victim to become very resentful that they're not getting what they absolutely want or what they think they need and what they believe that they're entitled to. Look at people who are on food stamps. They get posed with the question of, do I go to work or do I start this new job that's going to be paying me more? Or do I stay in the low area because I still get plenty of food? That is a very big question, a very big problem that people on food stamps actually get. I know we face that problem, and that was a really hard situation whenever I finally made enough to where all of a sudden we got a letter from the food stamp office saying, dude, y'all make too much money. You're not getting no more. Oh, crud. What do you do now? And all of a sudden it's, instead of having, lots of hamburger meat and chicken in the refrigerator, we had hot dogs and, a lot of inexpensive stuff. We all of a sudden fell back onto, didn't fall back as far as where we were having Hamburger Helper, but we, instead of getting Del Monte green beans, we were looking for the Great Value green beans. We were looking for the generic brands. These all, it's a scary deal, but at the same time, when you face those problems and you're actually willing to take that problem on and take responsibility for that situation that you're in, knowing what the goal is going to be, you can actually face that a lot more. So you actually are able to grow. And like I said before, victims can't grow because they're rejecting all that responsibility, rejecting all that gratitude and abundance that they actually have. And instead, they're turning around and throwing a fit about what they don't have. You hear people complain about all sorts of stuff. they don't have enough money for this or that, and they can't afford their kids, their kids' clothes. But yet, if you go into into their house, there's a good chance you probably find, at the very minimum, a 50-inch television. And somebody's probably got a couple of very recent smartphones in their hands, maybe even a tablet or two. It's not that they didn't have the money. They had the money. They just wanted to spend their money on something that they wanted instead of what they needed. People do that. We do that. Like I said, we always have plenty of money for everything we truly want. Not truly need, but what we truly want. So, because when we have that ability and we see something and we really want that new item or that bigger television or whatever, we're going to find a way to scrape that money together. Whenever smokers are, especially broke people who are smokers, they can come up with with cigarette money every time. They may not get paid for another week and a half, but by gosh, they're going to scrape enough change together to be able to go grab a pack of cigarettes. And so they have enough to get what they truly want, but they won't. But victims won't grow. It's not that they can't, but they won't. And that's because, again, to be able to grow, you have to have an abundant mindset. You have to be able to look at something and see what resources are actually around you. Look around you and be able to see that. You also have to be able to accept the times that you failed. And there's nothing wrong with failing because you're going to be learning from it. Failing is uncomfortable. It's horrible. It's terrible. And, there's times you're going to want to scream and yell and cuss about it. And okay. Good. You're feeling that aggravation of not being able to make it, but at least from there, you can actually pick those pieces up, see where the plan went wrong, make the needed change, and go again. You can take that action to correct whatever the failure was. A victim will just throw their hands up and say, well, I can't do this, and just cry about it. Victims won't grow. While a person who's taken responsibility for their actions will grow every time. So with that, guys, I want to thank you very much for listening. I appreciate the time you took to hear my little spiel about victims and their perceived virtues that are actually to their detriment. If you like the show, I appreciate it if you shared it out to your social media groups. If you happen to think of somebody who this message would really ring with, send that to them in a message. There's most of our podcatchers have some type, podcast players have some type of share button. Share that out. If you want to share it with a particular timestamp, okay, whatever. I would just like for as many people to be able to get the information they need to be able to start growing, give up the victim mindset and become the man that they need to be, that their families need to be. And if you are tired of being a victim and you want to become a man who lives their life on their terms and is the man their wife needs, and the type of man that their wife looks to and is turned on by and wants to be able to have more sex and have a complete and full life, get a hold of me. You can go to relaxedmale.com / work with me, or work with Brian, actually. And, or at the top, you will see work with Brian. You can click there, or you can actually also join our men's group, Brotherhood of Men. This is a exclusive men's group that helps men to be able to become a greater man, to be able to embrace their masculinity by having just nothing but guys there who are out to support you and to make sure that you become the best man possible. So with that, guys, thank y'all very much for listening. We'll talk to y'all next week. Bye.